come blue and white and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Here Ken Leisure with a pass so true to ball.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, your one-stop shop for all things Carlisle United. From Mark Winstanley to Keith Walwyn and Andy Dibble to Mark Doby, we've got it covered. On today's episode, we're going to be looking back on 2 points picked up against Barrow and Newport, previewing another huge couple of games against Port Vale and Bolton Wanderers. It was a roundup of what ex-Blues have been getting up to. I'm joined on this episode by one of my co-hosts, Mike Booth. Mike, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, it's going all right. You know, we've got a little unbeaten run going, and despite 2 draws, I think we're actually closer to the playoffs now than we were last week, aren't we?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it, the way things are going at the moment. We seem to be the only team pushing for the playoffs who's actually in any sort of decent form. It's really weird how it's panned out. Yet we're not quite getting it. It's just that feeling of could have got 3 points from one of those games. It almost would have been better if we'd lost against Barrow and beaten Newport, wouldn't it? And get that one place closer. And obviously Newport wouldn't have got the point as well. But can't win everything, can you? I suppose that's the way it goes. Okay, there's no news this week. It's another quiet week. I think things are just plodding along, isn't there? I think the only thing that's come out is the news about the dates for the playoffs, isn't it? I think, and we'll read them out when we know we've got a chance to get in the playoffs. Let's not jinx it. let's be good, and we'll do them next week if we can.
Yeah.
As well as that, I think they've announced when the fixtures are going to be out for next season. Again, we'll cover that next week, and I think next week we might have a little look at the contract situation on players as well. It might be one of those ones where, God forbid, if we lost both the games, we're out of playoff contention. We start looking towards next season, don't we? So, but hopefully we'll have won both, and we'll be looking ahead and maybe planning a trip to Wembley. Maybe, just maybe. But there you go.
Well, I think because they announced that the FA Cup final has 8,000 fans allowed to go to it, but 2,000 for each team, with 4,000 being corporate, which I just think is standard FA nonsense. But yeah, we'll see.
You think for 1 year they could have said, sod the corporates, let's just have fans in for this one.
Yeah, although I don't know if the Club Wembley thing is still a thing where people.
I don't think they'll be able to this time, I'd guess. But there you go. Okay, then let's get straight into it, then, Mike. So we're looking back at the 2 games we played. As you mentioned, there already 2 draws in a row: a 2-2 draw against Barrow, and a 0-0 draw with Newport County. I mean, 2 tough trips, I think you'd say, and. With hindsight, maybe you would take a point from each of them, but particularly the Newport game, you look back and you think that was a real chance to get 3 points in that game, wasn't it? And Barrow less so because they battled back well in that game and they were leading for such a long time. But is there a feeling there maybe that it's a case of 4 points drop rather than 2 important points from 2 games?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the same time, though, I think it's actually nice to be in a position with that Newport game where we think we could have won the game rather than we're feeling down and frustrated at a poor performance, Yeah. I mean, what's mad is that Newport game, I think we created far better chances in that than we did in the Crawley game.
Yeah.
And we beat Crawley 2-0, which is the way football goes sometimes, but we created some really good chances. We were unlucky. It's just the way it is. But if we're creating better chances against teams week in, week out, 9 times out of 10 we're going to win games, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the possession stats against Barrow, we actually had more possession than them, 55%, which is maybe why we struggled a little bit. We had a lot of the ball, but we didn't. We don't like to have the ball too much, do we? That's the problem.
No.
Against Newport, it was 51% in their favour, 49%. I mean, practically half and half, isn't it? So, yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? Well, let's look straight into the Barrow game then, Mike. Let's give the listeners a little bit of insight here. You didn't actually get to watch this game live, did you? You've watched back the highlights and all that, haven't you? So you got an idea of the key moments at the very least. But we'll start off with one of the highlights then. Scoring after just 3 minutes and a very unlikely goal scorer, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, well, you say unlikely, but he's a big lad to have in the box on these set pieces, and he's come close a couple of times, but it's great that he's finally got his goal. his post-match comment...
Jack Armour, by the way.
Yeah, Jack
you haven't
Armour,
said his name
obviously.
there, but there you go.
Yeah, but his post-match comments were quite interesting, where he basically said that he was one of the lads that had COVID and that there's 14 others, and that they just felt like they were going into... When they came back off the break, they felt like they were going into the first game of the season without a pre-season, and they just felt completely off the pace. That's what he was saying, and it's understandable, and I guess it goes some way to explaining the dip in form that we had.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, he said about 14 others, didn't he? I think so. 15 members. I mean, that I'd heard that number recently. I hadn't said anything because I know the club, don't really want it to be out in the open. But it seems they're talking a little bit more freely about it now. Now the levels are getting back to normal. I think it's almost not insurance is the wrong word, but they were covering themselves. They didn't want to be saying, "Oh, players are really struggling." But it's pretty clear now, isn't it? When we look back at it, that it did really badly affect the squad, and we are starting to see them get back to the levels they were at previously. So that's a good thing. But you're right, brilliant header from him, to be fair. He got into the right place, and once again, Colin Guy, just an assist machine, isn't he? Just incredible the amount of goals he set up this season. And his corners dropped off a bit, didn't they? I think they were looking a bit poor for a while, but last few games, all of his set piece deliveries have been on the money, haven't they? Really, and
yeah, they really are.
We should really have scored more from them, realistically, when you look at it. But yeah, it's a fair point that about the thing. We were on top for about 15 minutes, and I can tell you this bit, he didn't see it, but we were on top for about 15 minutes after that, but then we just switched off, and it's really frustrating. When you look back at the equaliser from Scott Quigley, got to say, actually, Scott, we'll talk about it in a minute, but Scott Quigley, what a good player he does look for Barrow. It's frustrating because it's one of those ones, and people say, McDonald and Hayden maybe should have done better. But actually, if you look, McDonald and Hayden, they actually play a bit of an offside trap. And it's Jack Armour that's caught a little bit napping. He doesn't step up with him. If he steps up with him, quickly he's a good 2-3 yards offside, and the linesman clearly flags. In live action, I thought he looked clearly offside, but actually looking back at him, he just about played himself on. It's hard to tell because you can't look along the line because the camera angle, but I think he probably is onside with hindsight. And yeah, it's just one of those ones a bit frustrating, isn't it? That Jack didn't step up in line with the thing, but it's one of those things I suppose you learn as a team as you play together more.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think, was it last week that we were saying how a lot of the stick that McDonald is coming for has been kind of unjust? And to be fair, he had a bit of a shocker in that one. But you know what? He made up for it in the Newport game. He had a very, very good game there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a frustrating game, the Barrow one, really, wasn't it? I saw the extended highlights, and yeah, it would have been nice to get all 3 points, but in the grand scheme of things, looking where we are now on the table, a point wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, Barrow, to be fair, we're going into the game on decent form as well, round about the same form we're on, so it's not to be sniffed at, that, I suppose. You mentioned, obviously, McDonald there. Yeah, hands up, a few people were giving us stick on Twitter and saying, they're not for all the loving up and praise that McDonald got. He had a stinker in his back. He didn't have a good game. I'm not even going to doubt that. The second goal, it's a frustrating one because the big issue is he just didn't deal with the ball quickly enough when he had it. And he does that occasionally, and it is frustrating. He just thinks sometimes he's got a little bit more time on the ball than he actually does. Yeah. And I think what his problem is, he's trying to be a bit more careful with it and play the ball into good areas and towards players. And sometimes you think to yourself, players closing you down, like Quigley, just get rid, just hit it. And a few people did say, he shied from the ball, then he hid from his error. I respectfully disagree with that, having watched the highlights back again now. If you watch it, no, he doesn't go directly to Quigley. But if he goes directly to Quigley, he'll look a mug because Quigley's faster than him. And he'll get away from him. What he doesn't take an entirely direct route towards Quigley, but he does go into the right area, get across to cover the position. And he does really well there in that sense. What he doesn't do well then is actually the second ball. Quigley gets past him a little bit too easily. And that's not him hiding or shying. That's just poor play at the end of the day. You've got to be a bit stronger there. And he's a big, strong lad, McDonald. He can do better there, in my opinion. But yeah, I disagree that he shied away from the ball. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Mike. I think, for me, he covers the position quite well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought he made the initial error, and he was sort of, scrapping with himself to try and make up for it, and he just seemed a little bit all over the place to me. And then, there's a debate, isn't it? Could Tanner have won the ball a bit? But for me, when he's one-on-one with him in the box, if he sticks a leg out too much, he goes down. Potential red card, even.
I'd argue it probably wouldn't be a red card because of the fact that if he's making a genuine attempt to get to the ball, which you'd say he would, although with this ref, God knows what he would.
Well, yeah.
We'll get onto that in a minute. Tanner didn't have a great game, to be fair. He got a little bit bullied in this one, and we are big fans of George, as you know. We think he's going to play at the highest level, we really do. But it's one of those games. For me, it seems like his fitness is a little bit up and down in terms of the sharpness, which is to be expected. If potentially he might be one of the players who had COVID as well, and with the injury he had too, it's going to be tough for him, isn't it? And I think it was a bit of a mercy substitution in the second half, wasn't it, from Beach to take him off. And got to give some credit to Pat Bruff as well. There was lovely footwork to get it away from Tanner and get into the box and then finish really smartly. He's having a brilliant season for Barrow. Really, really is.
Yeah, well, a lot of their fans are saying that he's possibly player of the season for them, which is great for him. So
yeah, it tells you how well he's played, isn't it? And I know some people said, "Oh, we shouldn't let him go," but I mean, realistically, he wasn't going to get in the team ahead of Granger for us. No. So he's done the right thing for his career to go away, get his experience, and get his appearances at other clubs. And he's a League Two player now, and he's a player. He could probably play at a high level. To be fair, the way he's playing, so good luck to the lad. But yeah, like you said, I think Tanner maybe could have done a little bit better. He just sort of, I think you're right. He probably did panic a bit and thought, if I actually go in here, I'm going to end up giving away a penalty and potentially a red card. Just the way it is, isn't it? Let's talk about the ref then briefly, about the second yellow that wasn't given. So Neil Eardley, experienced defender for Barrow, he was getting a bit of a torrid time down the left, wasn't he? I think he was up against Patrick, and I think he brought him down and got a booking for it. And then later on, a ball was played forward, and Alessandro made him look a bit of a chump, didn't he? I think he won the ball off him and was getting away, and he basically rugby tackles him. Yeah. And the ball comes, and we had a decent, promising attack at that point, and the ref played on. Now, the issue comes there, I know this for a fact, this has always been the case, is that once you've done the play on, if you think it's going to be a second yellow to go for a red card, you've got to stop play there, and then whether there's an advantage or not, you should stop the play. He didn't stop the play. He played the advantage. I can't see how anyone can say that's not like... He's not made an attempt to get the ball. He's hauled the player down. He's brought him down. It's a cynical foul. That for me should... I know that people put their things that all the rules have changed. Even allowing for that, for me, that's a second booking. Yeah. I don't know your thoughts on Mike. It just feels like that to me.
No, definitely. I mean, this rule change seems a little bit weird because it always has been the case is that if you pull play back after, it can't be a red card, but it can be a yellow card. But yeah, it just, I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020 and we didn't score from the advantage, but I think a lot of people, even so, would prefer the free kick and the red card than the advantage, But that's the way it is. And like I said with the Newport game, it's good that we can sort of say, oh, if they'd had a red card, we could have won, kind of thing. It's nice that we can say these things rather than, oh, we were lucky there, you know what I mean? Like we were maybe a few weeks ago.
It's one of those ones that you wonder if that had happened, if Barrow might have dug in and held on for the 2-1 possibly. It's one of those ones, isn't it? But, yeah. Okay, well, we finally did get an equaliser later on. The second half was a bit better, a little bit more promising. I thought Anderton coming on actually made a difference. I thought he used the ball a lot better, and we've got Armour over to the right, and we know how good he can be cutting in from the right with his left foot and playing the balls into the box. And it was from a long ball forward from Anderton that Zanzala, he was very, very quiet in this game, but the one time he came to life was this point, wasn't it? And he wins the ball and turns the defender, and the defender, I think, knew as soon as he'd done it what he'd done, and it was always going to be a penalty, wasn't it, I think, and took the responsibility as well to take it, because Alessandro, I think, has always been the designated penalty taker for us, but he stepped up and finished it really well. I think Dan said, didn't he, on the chat we have, that it was a weird run-up he took. It was almost straight, wasn't it? But they're almost good, those run-ups, aren't they? Because the keeper doesn't really know which way you're going to hit it, does he?
Yeah, but I think it's hard when you're running straight on, if you're right-footed, to kick it to your right, I would think, unless you're sort of almost slice it a little bit. But no, it was a good, cool penalty under pressure, and he's just a very sort of composed player enjoying his football, isn't he?
Yep, definitely. And you'd probably say we probably could have been the team to win it at the end there. I know they had one chance after that, but we look like the side most likely to win late on. Let's quickly touch on Barrow themselves, actually. Got to say, you can see why they've got themselves out of trouble, can't you? They're a very well organised side. They've got some good players in there. And I think in Quigley, they've got a very combative striker. And if he's still at Barrow next season, you can see him being one of the top scorers in the division if they keep a decent core of their squad together, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing that I feel if we had a sort of 15, 20 goal a season striker with us, I think that could have maybe been the difference for us this season.
From the start of the season, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, let's move on to the Newport game. This is one that you did watch, so you can comment a little bit more on this one. A mate of mine, Ian, said that he thinks this was the best performance away from home since Walsall in January. Only thing missing a goal, and I wouldn't disagree with that, would you?
No, not at all. Yeah, it's spot on. It's weird because we've seen some awful 0-0 draws, haven't we, as fans over the years? But this it wasn't boring by any stretch of the imagination. You know, like I said before, created a lot of chances, and again, Farman needed to make a couple of saves at sort of key moments to keep it level, and. Yeah, all in all, we were unlucky. But the thing that I enjoyed the most is, Newport, they were just awful, like houses, basically. That's for want of a better word. They were just the dark arts. That was their plan, and the referee was not having any of it. And it was great to see because there's so many refs at this level that just let players do that. And there was one moment in particular. I think it was Labadie. Went down clutching his knee, and the referee gave nothing, and then so he started clutching his head, which obviously the referee has to stop play for a head injury, which I just think is shocking.
But he took one look at him, didn't he, and said, "Now get on with it." And he didn't give a free kick. He let us take the throw in.
Yeah,
so he didn't have any issue with it. Yeah, I think early on he was falling for it a little bit, but I think it went on so much that I think he got to the point and was like, all right, you guys are taking the piss out of me here, basically. So I'm not going to let this carry on. And I think. Full credit to the ref there. I thought, he had a decent game. The ref, he maybe could have given out a couple more bookings, maybe at a push.
Yeah.
But bar that, you couldn't really fault what he did, to be fair. So we dominated this game for long periods, but just a bit of wasteful finishing really cost us, wasn't it? I think Patrick a couple of times, especially that. I think there was one where he was through on goal where he won the ball brilliantly on the halfway line, did really, really well. Got away and he didn't go down the channel. He came inside to get central, didn't he?
Yeah, that was a really good touch. That to just take it a bit more central.
Really good touch. One, it wasn't a great finish. Two, if he got his head up, Alessandro was free in the middle, unmarked, and probably had a tap in. It's one of those ones, isn't it? It's a little bit of decision making there, isn't it, from Patrick that needs to be better.
But at the same time, if that was our defender that came back and got back, would be calling him an absolute hero because it was very good sort of last-ditch defending. But there was that chance, and McDonald's chance is probably the one that we could have got the goal from.
It's one of those ones. I've watched it again, and it's not as easy a chance as it looks because he's having to head it at pretty much knee height, just above knee height. It's not easy, and actually, you know what? Full credit to the defender. If that had been McDonald at the end doing that defending, you'd give him big credit saying you've done enough there to put off the defender or the attacker so he can't actually get a head on goal. And it's not a sitter in the way that it's difficult for James Phillips and Jabbo, who's doing the co-commentary already, come here to do it because they only see it once and they saw it from the other angle, the other side, probably maybe a little bit lower down. And I don't think the view's great in Newport. On the TV, you could see a bit better, couldn't you? That it wasn't quite as easy chance as it looked, but you've got to give full credit to Rod. I thought he was man of the match for me. It was a massive improvement on the Barrow game. He kicked everything clear. He headed everything clear. Maynard barely got a kick out of him all night, didn't he? And Hayden as well. Actually, to be fair, I think the pair of them looked a good partnership. And it's something we didn't actually touch on the Barrow bit. Actually, I would have said I think Hayden didn't have a very good game against Barrow. I thought his distribution was poor at times. He was playing the ball to the wrong foot for a lot of players, and as a result, they were having to try and shift it and were getting tackled. And the difference with Hayden and McDonald is that Hayden's got the pace to get himself out of trouble, hasn't he? He can get back and do it. And when he can't, to be fair, McDonald's covered quite well at times for him. And I think both of them had a really good game against Newport.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've noticed with Hayden since we came back is, first half of the season, he was absolutely as strong as an ox. And he seems to have just lost that little bit of strength now. But he had a good game in the Newport game, and I certainly feel on McDonald. I think his goal is coming. He's getting closer and closer. And
win at Wembley. That's what it is. You're going to win at Wembley. Definitely.
Yeah, and everyone who slagged him off will, forever be in debt to him.
Now we said that, he's going to give away a penalty at Wembley, isn't he, or the playoff semi or something?
Yeah, probably.
We're going to look really stupid. But there you go. A little bit of tactical change from Beach for this game, wasn't there? I think I kind of expected Tanner to be dropped because he didn't have a great game against Barron. When he doesn't have a good game, Beach does seem to tend to take him out the firing line for the next match. Bit of a surprise, though, that it was Danny Devine that came in to play the full 90 minutes as well, after being out for, 5 months. I thought he might bring Anderton in and switch Armour over, but because Armour's so settled at left-back, maybe that's the reason. And I've got to say, I think Danny Devine had a terrific game. I think he was probably ran McDonald as close as possible for man of the match. He strikes me as a player who, I think Beach has said he's very uncomplicated, isn't he? He's not fussy. You tell him to do something, he's like, yep, no worries, boss, and that's all you'll hear from him. He strikes me as a player you could tell him, go and play left wing today, and he'd go out there and do a solid job for you. Or, go and play up front, solid job. Centre back, solid job.
Yeah.
You just know you can rely on him to do a good job. I think right back's probably the best one he'd do out of those utility positions, other than centre midfield, his best position. But he's got a great engine on him. He's a player who's really, he's not played that much for us this season, but he's really surprised me as how good a player he actually is.
Yeah, I mean, he had I think their winger maybe got the better of him a couple of times, but, bear in mind, this is the first football that he's played in how long? In a 90-minute game, in a big game as well. But I was surprised the other day by how old he is, because he seems to have been around for years, but he's only 23. And, because, like I say, I thought he'd been around for years and years, but I think he's one of the ones contracted for next season.
He is, he's got a 2-year deal, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have players who can come in and just do a job when needed, and seemingly not be too disruptive in the dressing room when he's not starting every week either.
Yeah, his last game was the Stevenage game, the one that Tanner got injured in as well. So that's 12th of December. So it is pretty much 5 months since he made an appearance. He's only made 9 appearances this season, but he feels like a player who's done so well when he's come in. So
yeah.
Full credit to the lad. I genuinely think he could play a big part at the end of the season. And you kind of feel a bit sorry for Taylor Charters, who's lost his pace in the squad, because obviously Coyote's back now, and we'll mention him in a sec. But I think Devine looks like a player who's a bit more ready, doesn't he? He looks like a player who's had those 3 or 4 years at Bradford as well. And that's kind of what we want Charters to have with us. Have his 2 or 3 years to build himself up and get to the level of someone like Devine, who's ready to come straight into the team and play whenever you need him. So yeah. Mentioned there, obviously, Coyote back for a few mins. Not the longest run out, but really good to see him back on the pitch as well.
Yeah, it was, and we said I think last week that it'd be hard for him to work his way into the starting 11 with the way that the front three have been playing. But at the same time, we need to keep things fresh. I think the players that have been out for a game, when they've come back in, they've looked so much better for it. So perhaps a little bit of rotation can finally happen with the front three. Yeah,
you almost think when you look at the team, there's some players who are going to start pretty much every game. I mean, your centre backs, you've got no choice at the moment. Keeper pretty much the same. Full-backs is where maybe you can tweak things a little bit. Callum Guy's going to start every game because he's so important as long as he's fit. Riley, probably the one who's going to maybe come in and out occasionally. Mellish probably going to start most. The front three, at the moment, picking themselves, but they can be tweaked as well, can't they? That's the way you look at the place where you can change it. The thing is, Coyote's such an important player when we play well as well, because he's aerial presence, because he wins so much in the air.
Yeah,
he's a massive player for us in that sense. So I can probably see him maybe coming in a couple of games. It might be like one way he doesn't play at the weekend. Maybe he gets his 30 minutes of the weekend, and then for the Bolton game you bring him in, because he gave them a really tough game back in December, didn't he? So you do wonder that. A couple of general points before we going to the half-time break, Mike. Got to say, 2 really poor pitches. I mean, Barrows wasn't as bad. I mean, Barrows has got the patchy bit, and as they said in the radio, that's where they were doing the new stand work, and you said it last week. So hopefully next season, if they take it up and redo it, it'll be fine, and it'll be a decent pitch. But we've got to make a point about Newport. I mean, I know there's some mitigating circumstances this year with all the games played together and things like that, but there comes a point where surely the EFL have got to say something to them about that. And if there's an issue with them ground sharing with the rugby club, they've got to put a plan together for the next few years to sort that out, and whether that's somehow getting a deal where only one of the rugby clubs plays and instead of 2 of them, or getting their own ground. There's got to be something done there, because it's getting ridiculous now, the amount of games and the quality of pitch. And we tried to play a little bit of football, and Newport tried to play football as well, but they can't on a pitch like that, can they? No,
but it's quite funny because I actually thought that Newport's pitch looked the best that I've seen it in years, and it still looked awful. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how bad it normally is. Like, I dread to think what it'd be like if they didn't have that couple of weeks playing at Cardiff. Yeah, I don't think it did them much good though, did it? I think they won one of them, but I think they lost the other one against Orient, didn't they? So yeah, it's one of those ones. But yeah, I think overall, Mike, 2 okay results. I think in hindsight, good performances as well, which is the important thing. If we played badly, you'd be worried coming to these games. We're playing well. We didn't play brilliantly against Barrow, but we ground out our result. That's another good sign, isn't it? I think for the running, and the thing is, we're still in touch. And that's all you can really ask for at this point. Keep yourself in touch going into those final few games. That's definitely
the key thing. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of part 1 then, Mike. We'll be back shortly to discuss part 2, where we're going to look ahead to the massive games. They're all massive games now, but 2 massive games against Port Vale and Bolton. So we'll be back in just a sec.
Hi, this is George Tanner. You are listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Okay, we're back for part 2 now. As usual, we've managed to get an opposition podcast to come on and discuss with us. Obviously, last week we had Adam Johnson from BBC Radio Come. Big thanks again to Adam for coming on the show. We really appreciate that. This week we've spoke to the guys from the Port Vale podcast, the Vale and the Ale pod. You can tell what their big hobbies are, can't you? We've got Jonny on from their podcast to discuss the game and discuss what a disappointment they've been, especially to us, because we'll talk about it in a minute, but we had big hopes from this season. And talk about their big upturn in form recently and what the hopes are for next season in the future. So here's the chat we had with Jonny now. Jonny, I think in pre-season, a lot of people were expecting Port Vale to be one of the big contenders for promotion, and on our podcast, we definitely did. We predicted you guys to finish in the top 3, all 3 of us, all 3 of the hosts. Didn't really work out that way, has it? It's been a bit of a topsy-turvy season, is it fair to say, at Vale Park?
Yeah, something like that. All 3 of our guys also topped us, had us top 3. I think the biggest issue was we were very reactive this year. Now, our chair is in her first real season as chair. She obviously took over last year, sorted a few of the internal issues out because there was a lot. And this season was her first real season. She set herself up massively by telling everyone we don't do 8th. So that put a lot of expectation on fans and probably the players as well. And then we went on a horror run from November. So we kind of waited to see if we could get out of that, and then by the time we actually acted and hired a new manager, it was a little too late. So yeah, it's been a hard season. Yeah,
we say it's been a tough season for you, but recent form, I mean, the turnaround since Darryl Clark has come in has been incredible. I mean, he's not exactly a glamour name, although he's someone who's done well at this level before, but struggled a bit at Walsall. What kind of a job has he done there? It just seems amazing that he's turned around so much.
The main difference that we can see as fans is fitness. The players look like they can run and press and do the jobs for 90 minutes. And now that's not a dig at the previous management, but previously they were set up to play a certain way. So the way Clark plays, the fitness required is different. But I just think that you look at them and you look at each one of them and you think they'll run through a brick wall for you now, whereas before they were just a bit like, nah, this isn't for me, this isn't.
Yeah, interesting that Askey obviously was your manager previously, wasn't he? And
yeah,
I think a lot was expecting me. Obviously, he did a brilliant job at Macclesfield, a club where he's an absolute legend. He went to Shrewsbury and struggled a bit to make the step up there. People felt maybe this was the right club for him, obviously because obviously he played for you guys, didn't he? I think early in his career, or he was with you at least anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, where did it go wrong for him, do you reckon?
Kings Lynn in the FA Cup. that looks like that's the bit where we pinpoint that the season took a massive nosedive. To be honest, we've heard a lot of rumours, and obviously not all rumours are fact. And we try as best to fact check a lot of stuff because, as you'll probably be aware, you get sent a lot of things where my mate's hairdresser's told me this sort of thing.
I heard plenty of them.
Yeah, so we've heard a lot of things, and some of the stuff that we know is probably true because you'll know all about the lad, but Harry McCurdy was apparently causing a bit of issues.
I'm genuinely shocked to hear that.
Yeah.
We'll get on to him later because he's one I want to ask about, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, so he was apparently causing a bit of issues, and there was a couple of other players causing issues, and it seems to stem right back to communication, really. Askey wasn't a man of many words. Even in his interviews, he was very subtle, and I couldn't imagine ever... He always came across a bit like a supply teacher is the best way, where you couldn't ever imagine being shouted at by him. And we've got a very strong dressing room, so sometimes the players probably needed a kick in and telling, sort yourselves out rather than the nicey nice approach. And then Kings Lynn happened, and then we went on a horror run of, I think, 4 or 5 defeats in a row. And it just failed from there, really. We couldn't see any way back. But the board trusted him, believed in him, and backed him for another 5-6 games where it didn't turn around, and then they finally acted middle of January. So it was a kind of trust thing because obviously he did really well last season with us. We were playing some nice football. A home record was brilliant. So it was a trust thing, but we live and learn.
Yeah. He strikes me as one of those kind of people who maybe it just works for him at one club, really. In the way that, Macclesfield's a club where he is, a god there, basically, isn't he, for what he's done as a player and a manager. So it's just one of those things, isn't it, I guess. Just quickly, let's get on to... I've titled this bit Carlisle Rejects, but it's probably a harsh way of putting it. But you've had a hell of a lot of players in recent years who've played for Carlisle at some point in recent history, haven't you? It seems a bit of a conveyor belt. I mean, at the moment, you've currently got 5 in Sean Brisley, Luke Joyce, David Amu, Mark Cullen, and obviously the aforementioned Mr. McCurdy, who let's have a separate point about him in a second because there's so much you could talk about that boy. And obviously as well, Richie Bennett in the fairly recent past as well. How have all those 5 got on? I mean, particularly Luke Joyce out of those, I think, is the one who Carlisle fans will remember most fondly.
Yeah, we'll start at the back. Brisley, when he comes on into a game, he is the worst centre half you will ever see because he just can't seem to grasp how to play football when he comes into a game. When he starts a game, he's your old-fashioned horrible centre half. He kicks everything, he heads everything, and that's including people. And we've moved to a back 3 recently, and he actually looks very comfortable there. We don't expect him to play football because that's not Brisley. But
it's funny you say that because for us, he was brought in almost as a ball-playing centre-back to play alongside Michael Rains for us. And you know what? He actually scored a 30-yard left-foot volley for us against Yeovil. Honestly, if you Google it, if you get the chance, it's the most ridiculous goal for him. Totally out of character. He just hammers it with his left foot. Bear in mind, he's right-footed as well over the keeper. It's brilliant.
Well, yeah, I suppose that's quite interesting because for us he can't really pass wind, and he just looks like he does the simple stuff well. And obviously, some players are geared up that way. So yeah, Brisley's one of them signings where when he starts, you're confident. If he comes on in a game, you're thinking, "Oh God, what's going to happen here?" Moving on to Joyce. Well, what can we say? He's one of our best players, even at 35. He sorts that midfield out well. He dictates it. He does that role in between the back 3 at the minute and the midfield 4 in front of him. He marshals that. He takes the ball. He's comfortable. You know all about Joyce.
He's Mr. Dependable, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a 7 out of 10 most weeks, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing we like about Joyce. It's just that when he first arrived, a lot of Vale fans didn't appreciate him.
Yeah.
because
Same
he's not
with us.
glamorous. Yeah, he's not glamorous, is he? He doesn't score goals, he doesn't get assists.
Well, again, he scored a goal of the season for us from about 35 yards into the top corner. Again, an utterly ridiculous goal for a player you wouldn't expect it from.
Well, he did that against Morecambe for us last season as well. So he's obviously got it in his locker. He just doesn't like showing off too much. But yeah, I really like Joycey. Amu, he's an enigma. I think is the best way. You'll either get a 10 out of 10 or a 1 out of 10 performance from him. And luckily, last season, we got the good Dave Amu. He was brilliant last season. This season, he's been hit with injuries, and a lot of Cambridge fans were saying he'll have 5 on, 5 off. And that's how it seemed with him, which is a shame because there's a player in there somewhere. It's just, you've got to get him on the pitch.
I think his best spell of his career probably has been with us, actually. Funny enough, he had a spell where he scored a lot of goals for us, but he just dropped off towards the end, and it was inevitable that he was probably going to leave at that point.
Yeah, and then the last one before, obviously, the one that you'll want to talk about, Mark Cullen, hasn't scored away from home for us. Since he's had him, and looks like he's towing a caravan at the minute. He's another one that just can't stay fit.
Yeah, same problem we had with him. We signed him injured in the hope that he'd help us for a playoff campaign, and I think he only ended up playing about 10 games in the end. So
there's a player in there. There's a goal scorer in there as well.
Definitely.
That's the thing. When he's on the pitch, you can see there's a goal scorer in there. It's just that unfortunately, I don't think professional football's going to be his level next season.
No. All right, let's get on to the troublemaker himself. One of the most infuriating players I've seen play for Carlisle in recent seasons, because, my God, he's got ability, he's got pace, he's got trickery, he's got everything you could want to be a top quality winger. A player should probably play championship level, but his attitude off the pitch, Harry McCurdy, it baffles me. He spent a huge chunk of his time with us arguing with the fans. And bear in mind, he was top scorer, 11 goals, but he scored a goal, funny enough, against Darrell Clark when he was Walsall manager. We beat them 2-1 on New Year's Eve, I think it was, or New Year's Day. And he scored a last-minute back header, brilliant goal, really well taken, and he refused to celebrate with the fans, even though it was a last-minute winner. And our players were trying to drag him towards fans, but he'd been having a go at the fans in games. Prior to that, he was putting stuff on his Instagram, putting the finger to his lips and things like that. He also seems to spend a lot of his time on his Instagram, stuff like that, talking about Chelsea and how he goes to watch Chelsea play. I think he wants to be a professional Chelsea fan, basically. But from what you said there, then, it sounds like he hasn't really learnt his lesson at Port Vale. He was handed that chance. He was a player who, when we let him go, there should have been League One clubs chasing him, but clearly word had got out about his off-the-field issues, and you do wonder if he's going to make it as a professional footballer, really, don't you?
Yeah, we took a punt on him at the start of the season because we had Reece Brown, a winger, that he just left. He'd started in pre-season. Amu had got injured, so Reece had got the chance, and about 3 weeks before the season started, he just left. It was just like mutual termination, and it was a bit confusing, really, why he left. And it wasn't like he'd left to go to another club. He just left. So he said it was family, personal reasons. He moved back down south, sort of thing. So that's understandable. But we were left short of a winger. McCurdy being semi-local, we had a couple of ex-Villa players. Like we had Mitchell Clark here, who'd played with him and such like. So we took a punt, I think, hoping that being out of contract in the middle of a pandemic would kick him up the arse, basically, and it failed miserably under Askey. I think we only saw him about 5 or 6 times, to be fair. There wasn't a lot of game time, which suggests that stuff was going on off the field.
Mm-hmm.
There was lots of rumours going on about his attitude off the field. There's lots of rumours about training ground antics. We've spoken to players and stuff like that, and most of the players have said, no, that stuff hasn't happened, but they're also never going to dig someone out that they're in the dressing room with. But yeah, Clark's came in, and McCurdy wasn't even in the 25, because we've got 40-odd players registered, I think. It's absolutely ridiculous. So he wasn't even in the 25. So he's been coming in. He's been training. He played a couple of friendlies for Leicester under 23s. So he wasn't involved. And then Clark had an interview where he was asked about him, and Clark seemed a bit peeved by it because he says that there's a player in there and he believes in himself that he can get that player on the pitch and get that ability out there. I believe Darryl Clark can do that because at the minute he's turned a squad that looked destined for non-league into a squad that looks unbeatable. So he can do anything for me at the minute. Obviously, the groundedness of me thinks there's a lot of managers that have tried with Harry McCurdy.
Yeah.
And it's, does he care? That's the question. Yeah. I think, does Harry McCurdy care?
Yeah. I mean, even Stephen Presley, the manager who brought him in to us, even he was taking him out of the squad at times because there was clearly issues there. I agree with you. There is a player there with ability. I just wonder, he's going to find himself at Stafford Rangers within a couple of years, the way he's playing. That's just the reality of it right now. Let's move on from him then. A couple more quick questions. So, what are the hopes for the future then at Vale? Because obviously we've mentioned before you've got new owners who've been in place for a year or two now, and from the interviews I've read, they seem to have their heart in the right place, and they seem to be, they're looking forward at the club, aren't they? They seem to have good ambitions, don't they?
Yeah, very much so. They say all the right things, and to be fair to them, the actions that they've started to put in place are the right actions. So, before obviously the pandemic hit, they arranged for the Lawn Street stand, which hasn't had seats in half of it for about 400 years, to actually have seats in it because we were having a concert at the Vale Park with Robbie.
Yep.
So they'd arranged that, the exposure and stuff. They were going to release the new home shirt on the same day. You know the sort of things. They've got the sort of advertising. We're using Robbie Williams quite a lot because why wouldn't you? Yeah. He's a global star at the end of the day, and if he can shift a few extra shirts for you, let's go for it. So they're doing the right things there. They've spoken about the right things in terms of what needs to take the club forward. So they've hired a director of football in David Flitcroft. Mm-hmm. He went for the manager's job originally, had a 6-hour conversation with the chair to say, look, this club is not in a good place in the nicest possible way. There is too much wrong off the field for a manager to come in and fix. There needs to be a complete restructure. So he basically talked himself into a job. So either he's brilliant at it, or the stuff he said is spot on. Now, the stuff that's came out since, i.e. players haven't been having medicals when they've been signed, there's been no fitness data for how much the players have run or what activities they did during the 5 months off they had, and such like shows that actually he hasn't talked himself into a job. There is a role and a job there for him. So they're doing the right things there. They're spending money, which you can't criticise them for because they've sacked a manager, they've paid for a manager from another club, they've restructured the hiring staff. We've got quite a big coaching staff at the minute, but it's actually a needed coaching staff because they're not all first team coaching staff, and Vale fans are getting a bit worried by that because we seem to hire a new coach every other week sort of thing, but they don't understand every club's got that sort of setup. They just don't announce, oh, we've signed a youth coach sort of thing. So things are going the right way. It's just now we need to see action on the pitch, which in the last 6 we have. So
yeah, well, I suppose your aim for this season now is just get a good finish and carry that form on into next season and not drop off like you did last season, obviously. So yeah. Quickly, couple more things. So first up, who are the danger men to watch out for this weekend?
Oh, danger men. So Devante Rodney up front. We signed him on a free at the start of the season as a bit of a rough diamond, someone that we could use and polish. He's played pretty much every week since, due to injury, strikers not being able to hit a barn door and such like. He is very much a striker that probably, if you give it him in the 6-yard box, will put it wide. If you let him have it from 20 yards there, he'll bury it top corner. He's very hit and miss, and it's frustrating at times, but there's a good player in there. And then the other one is Dave Worrell. top assister in the league with Callum Guy.
Yeah.
And it's just, what can you say about Woz? He's brilliant. He's like an Energizer bunny.
To be honest, I would have picked Warren out of your squad. I've been the one to watch, definitely. And I don't know if he's playing much at the moment, but Tom Pope is always a nuisance whenever he plays against us, from what I remember, but there you go.
Yeah, Popey broke his collarbone against Sunderland about 8 weeks ago, so he's only just coming back. So he hasn't been in squads recently, but there's a chance.
Yeah. Finally, Jonny, thanks for giving up your time, particularly today. What's your predictions for the game?
At the minute, we look unbeatable, and that's not just because we've gone on a 6-game run. We aren't conceding chances. We're scoring goals. We're putting the product on the pitch. You're in really good form though, like in the sense of where you're at in the league. You've got a decent manager under your belt, and Callum Guy's a nuisance because when we had him on loan, he was brilliant. So that's frustrating. I think I'd be happy with a draw, but I could probably see you nicking it because the pessimist inside me says that we can't go on winning forever. So.
Oh, well, there you go. I think you're the first one since we've had on this to be that, even though you're in good form, to predict us to possibly win it. So
it's supporting Vale, mate. It does this to you.
Hey, it's the same with Carl. I can tell you that now. Jonny, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, and all the best for the rest of the season.
You too, Lee. Thank you.
Big thanks again to Jonny for taking the time out to speak to us about all things Port Vale. So let's get on to that one then, Mike. The first game up. It's one of those frustrating ones. If you played them maybe a month or so ago, you'd been quite happy to play them because they're in rotten form. But my God, they are the form team in the division. The job Darryl Clark's done over the last month or so is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like he says, 6 wins in a row, and the game before that was obviously a 1-0 defeat to Bolton, which there isn't a lot of shame in that,
no,
really.
Not at all. Not at all.
Especially given where they were in the table before that game. So, yeah, he really seems to have turned things around. And, you look at the league table and think that this is the easier of the two, but I don't think either of these games you could call easier than the other.
No, they're probably, bar Cheltenham, you'd argue these are the two toughest games we've got left.
Yeah,
probably,
definitely.
I think. And Cheltenham being a Tuesday night away game as well. The only hope with Cheltenham is that they'll have wrapped it up, promotion by that point, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's the thing we're really praying for, isn't it, really? Yeah, I don't know. It's a game like I really do want 3 points from it. I think we need 3 points, don't we? Basically, the more I think about it, we have to win this one. Whether we can't keep getting draws to keep ourselves in touch, because looking at the fixtures this weekend for the other teams as well, not all of them are going to arse it up, are they? One of them's going to try and pull away, aren't they? So yeah. Bit disappointing for us how well these lot have done this season, isn't it? Because I seem to remember on the pre-season prediction episode, all three of us boldly predicted that Port Vale would finish top 3, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
and they've just been an absolute mess, haven't they? I think from what Jonny was saying there, the problem seems to be that Askey just didn't have the discipline as a manager. It seems he worked wonders at Macclesfield. He did a brilliant job there, and he's a legend at Macclesfield, always will be. But it just feels like Shrewsbury and Port Vale have been too big a step up for him, don't they? And it seems, let's get on to him. Harry McCurdy, still a problem wherever he goes, isn't he? He just doesn't seem to get it into his head.
Yeah, I don't quite understand what's gone on with him, because he hasn't been registered, has he? But
He's registered again now.
He's registered again now, yeah.
Yeah, as Jonny sort of very briefly touched it there, but basically, McCurdy wasn't registered for January for the changes to the squad because they've got something stupid like 30, 40 players in their squad and not many of them are young. So they have to basically deregister them if they're not. So McCurdy was deregistered, but then the lad who was one of their wingers, one of their better players, got injured and out for the rest of the season. So they're allowed on that basis to put someone else back into the squad. And that's what they've done with McCurdy, but he's not really featured since then. Obviously, he went off to Leicester and did his trial thing. I mean, it's a little bit sad in a sense. It's such a waste of a talent in his case. But if he can't get into his head and he's just obsessed with winding up fans and rumours that he was very disruptive in the training ground at Port Vale, rumours that have been denied, I have to say. But mud sticks eventually. And the same thing was said about his time at Carlisle and by all accounts in his previous loan spells as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because when he left us in the summer, he'd had a good season, sort of goals and assists wise, and I think if
he should have been targeting a League One move based on those
he
stats.
should have been. And I think if his attitude matched his ability, he would have had loads of clubs coming for him. But he didn't join Port Vale until relatively late in the window.
They took a punt on him, didn't they? I think they lost a player, as you mentioned there. They lost a player and basically brought him in as a replacement and a punt to see if he could maybe turn his career around. Mm. But as it is, like I said there, he's going to be at Stafford Rangers next season if he's not careful.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
if he's lucky.
Yeah, or Bromley with his mate Byron Webster.
I think they probably think better of it. Probably, I'd imagine. But but yeah, this is going to be a tough one. Like I said, you look at this squad. There is quality in there. It still amazes you, doesn't it? That he didn't manage to turn on. I mean, David Worrell's the one that stands out, isn't he? He's up there. I think he's just behind Callum Guy now on the assists. But he's a player I've always really, really liked, and he's doing a great job at Port Vale. To credit to him. So let's move on to the Bolton one now. Then I mean, again, this is going to be a tough one. If you look back at when we played them on Boxing Day, you wouldn't have thought this was a tough game. Coming toward the end of the season, you thought, great, that shouldn't be too difficult. But their turnaround in form, not quite since then, because they had a couple of tough results after that as well. But since the turn of the year, Ian Evatt he's quite an arrogant bloke, isn't he? The way he speaks, and he's a very cocky bloke. But he's walking the walk right now, isn't he? The job he's doing there. Yeah, definitely, and it's not so long ago that we were saying Beach out, and I'm sure that the Bolton fans were saying Evatt out, and to be fair, they've given him time. They've probably given him time because he's on like a 3-year deal there, isn't he? And it costs quite a lot to sack him, but he's repaid that and really turned things around, and I wouldn't be surprised if they won the league, to be honest. Well, I think Dan's home for that because I think he's got a little bit of money on them to win the league, hasn't he? So I think Cheltenham still might just about do it. I think they've probably got enough to actually win it. But yeah, it is incredible. I think he's probably quite lucky, and I think he's benefited from the fact that fans aren't at games, doesn't he? Because if fans had been at games, they would have been on his back. Yeah. And I think the board wouldn't have had much choice, but because it's internet talk, basically. Similar with us. I think if we'd had fans at games, I'd imagine the board might have got a little bit twitchy, possibly. Yeah. But obviously, they knew behind the scenes what had happened with COVID and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you look at the squad, you would expect a squad like that, though, to be up near the top of the league. And he's done the job that's expected of him, hasn't it, really, to get them up and out of League Two at the first attempt. Not yet, obviously, but it looks likely now that they're going to go up. You'd imagine that top three probably isn't going to change before the end of the season, you'd think. Yeah, probably not, no. But, I mean, I'm just trying to think now from our perspective, would 2 points be okay from these games? I know we need 3 to get into the playoffs, but these are 2 very, very tough games. And I think I'd want 3 minimum from these 2 games, definitely. 4 probably would be the best result I think we could hope for. 6 would be amazing. But, definitely. But yeah, like I said, you look through that Bolton squad. I mean, Owen Doyle's the other one who stands out, doesn't he? I mean, he's a quality player who they brought him in to get goals, and he's got goals at the end of the day. Not as many as you probably would have hoped, but what can you do? I think the signing of Kieran Lee, I think they got him in January, didn't they? A good experienced midfielder at this level. He's been at Oldham and Sheffield Wednesday. Interestingly, one of the star men for them, they've always banged on about, is Ricardo Santos at centre back. He didn't look a star man on Boxing Day, did he? No. He was up for the Jude Sterling Award for the worst defensive performance of an opposition player against Carlisle for the season. He looked a shambles, and he looks like the kind of player. He's a big physical lad. He's strong, but if you get in and around him and get quick and harass him, he doesn't look comfortable on the ball, does he? No. But obviously, there's something that they, the Bolton fans who see him week in, week out, see that we didn't see that day. I think he'd maybe had 1 too many mince pies the day before. But, he certainly hadn't laid off the turkey the way he was playing, I think it's fair to say. But no, he looks a good player for them now, and full credit. I mean, I'm looking at their last lineup, and it's just good players all around, isn't it? I think they play a back. do they play a back four now? I think possibly. Obviously, Gethin Jones, ex-Carlisle in there, isn't he? Sean Miller came on as a sub, and Arta Ganoa was on the bench. Interestingly, they had Max Maddison on loan from Charlton, didn't they? He's a player who's, a lot expected him in the past when he was at Peterborough, big expectations. He's returned from his loan spell early to Charlton, hasn't he? Rumoured that he wasn't particularly settled off the pitch. I think he's got a young kid, and being away from London a lot of the time, obviously with the loan spell, and obviously with restrictions on, mixing and things like that due to COVID, I think it just got to him a little bit too much, and he never really settled there, did he? And he's gone back now. So the one player weaker in that sense, but I mean, when you look at the players they've got there anyway, I don't think they're worrying too much, are they, right now?
No, I mean, I think because we predicted big things for them and Salford, didn't we, at the start of the season? And I think the difference between the two is that Salford have thrown money at sort of Championship League One players and hope that that's enough. But Bolton have bought League Two players in who know the league and know what they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
And useful players like Miller, who can, he's not going to start every game, but he'll come on and he'll run and he'll cause problems, and he knows this level.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's the big difference. And I mean, if you get little gems like Arta Ganoa as well, who who's done really well for them. I think he's had a few injury problems, but when he's played, he's been a big star, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a shame that we never really got to see that at Carlisle.
We got to saw about 20 minutes of him, didn't we? I think
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll never forget that. He's not quite the shortest Carlisle United career ever, but he wasn't too far off. So that's Bolton for you. It's going to be a tough game. It'd be nice to play our first game at the University of Bolton Stadium. Shame that we can't be there to see it.
It'll still always be the Reebok in my head, isn't it?
It's one of those ones, isn't it? They always say that the best sponsorship deal you'll get for a new stadium is always the first one. It's always the one you'll get the most money for, because that company knows that they will be the company you'll always know the stadium by. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the challenge. That's why for ours, it's always best to get Emirates to sign up for a new deal every season, or the Etihad as well. But obviously the Etihad's a bit different because it's the actual owners, isn't it? But there you go. I mean, generally looking at the running now, Mike, let's have a quick look at that now. 6 games left for United. A few teams around us have got only 5 games left, so that is helpful. Port Vale up next. They're in 14th, but as we mentioned, form-wise, really, really good. Playing really well. Bolton third, again, form-wise, been brilliant. Then we've got, for me, a big opportunity in Harrogate. Now, Harrogate are currently 17th and dropping like a stone, aren't they? Yeah. But the key thing is they're 23rd in the form table. Only Forest Green are in worse form than them. So, I mean, I can't remember the last time they won a game. That their recent form, they haven't won in the last 6, at the very least, Harrogate. So that's a game where you think 3 points has got to be. And then you've got the massive one against Cheltenham, who are top of the league, albeit they're only 8th in the form table. So we're ahead of them in the form table. So you'd hope maybe by then they will have secured promotion. You don't know. I don't know how the results are going to work out. Then there's a trip to Leyton Orient. Now, Leyton Orient are currently 11th in the table, but form-wise, they're 6th, so very similar to us as well, but they've not won in the last 3. And then we finish off home against Walsall, which a while back you'd look and think, they've dropped down the table. They're in 18th place, should be an easy enough one. They've not lost in the last 6 either. 4 draws in there, but they've got 2 wins in the last 2, and the wins have been against Forest Green and Tranmere. So, last game of the season, you'd hope maybe they might ease off now they're safe, maybe, and hopefully they'll have their flip flops on and we'll be going for something. But it's not as easy a running as I thought. Harrogate's the one that stands out as a game where you can pick up 3 points, definitely, you'd think. Yeah. But the rest, the challenging fixtures, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I said last week, didn't I, that it's going to go right down to the final day. I haven't changed that opinion because it really is going to be a tough running, and I think we have to do it this year because I think the players that we have, your likes of Riley, Guy, Hayden when he's better, Tanner, players like that, they're too good for this level, and I just feel like if they go, we're just back to square one again. And
the positive I've got from that though is we've got the trigger clause in all their contracts.
We do,
So we'd get money for them. And the young players, and we should get good money for them. Riley, I think the positive there is that with his injury record, maybe teams won't take a punt on him straight away. They might wait and go for the January transfer window after that, possibly. That's the hope. But the other positive I was looking at here is the teams around us are challenging for the playoffs. Not many of them are in good form. We're in the best form of all of them, really, when you look at it. And Stephen is just below us, but I think they're probably now just out of contention, I think. Leighton Orient, again, it's one of those ones, in it? Orient maybe still just in contention. Bradford, you'd probably argue. I think Crawley's too late for them just because of having played a game less. But if you look at the form table for those teams, I mean, I'm just looking down at you now. Exeter City, 13th from the form table. They lost last time out against Barrow. Salford City, 15th from the form table. Lost to Bolton last time out. Had a three games without a loss before that, but they've had some iffy results prior to that. Crawley, again, their win against Bradford last time out was the first win they had in God knows how many games. Forest Green Rovers, not won in God knows how many games either. Tranmere, again, not won in... Some of their fans, I think they don't think they won in 8. And some of their fans are calling for Keith Hill's head. I thought they'd be nailed on to finish top 3 the way they were playing. I thought they were in a really good position.
Definitely. Yeah,
they've dropped off. And then Bradford are 11th in the form table. They're iffy, but I think maybe it might be tough for them with some of their remaining fixtures. We're in a good position in the sense of our form. That's what's really playing in our favour, I think.
We are, but with these 2 tough games, hoping, that we at least... Say if we get 2 draws from these next 2 games, then you're saying of us, Carlisle haven't won the last 4 games. So that's the way it is. And
Would you then take, though, a win and a draw? Sorry, a win and a defeat, sorry. So if we win against Port Vale to get us in there, and then you accept that Bolton are a really good team and they're probably going to win that one, I think the fixtures are quite favourable as well, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely take that. But yeah, we'll just see what happens, and never give up, because it's going to go right to the wire.
Well, I'm looking at that Tuesday night game. I'm just quickly looking at the fixtures here now. I mean, Bradford v Tranmere is one of the fixtures the night we play Bolton. Forest Green against Exeter. I mean, that's 2 huge ones there. Leighton Orient are playing Cambridge. Of the team, and Newport have got home game against Crawley. Now that's the one where you think Newport maybe got a bit of an advantage there. Salford are away at Walsall, and Walsall, we've seen them picking up really good form the last few games.
Yeah.
So actually, it might not end up being the worst night to lose a game. I don't want us to lose a game, but that's the night where you think actually it might not be too bad for us. Whereas you look at the Saturday game when we play against Port Vale, Exeter at home against Southend should be a gimme for them. You'd think 3 points, surely. Forest Green against Scunthorpe, a good chance for them maybe to get back to winning ways, because Scunthorpe have just given up for the season, haven't they, really?
Yeah.
Bradford are away at Harrogate. Local derby. Maybe Harrogate play for a bit of pride and get a draw, hopefully, from that one. Leighton Orient home against Barrow. Not an easy game for them. I mean, tough, long trip for Barrow, but you never know. And Newport at home against Cambridge. So you'd think Newport potentially could lose that one. Cambridge really want to get top 3 place nailed down. And then Tranmere against Salford. 2 teams around us playing each other. So if you get 3 points against Port Vale, we could be in the playoffs at that point. And then you think to yourself, okay, Bolton, let's make sure we don't get beat. And if we do get beat, teams around us might not pick up the points.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, goal difference will be potentially massive as well. And just looking now, we have better goal difference than Bolton in 3rd, Morecambe in 4th, Tranmere in 5th, and equal goal difference to Newport in 6th, and better than Forest Green in 7th. And
if we're going to catch up to get up to the point of them, it's only going to increase, isn't it? Because we're going to win games.
Exactly, and they're going to lose games, so theirs will drop further.
And I'll quickly look ahead to the weekend after, obviously, when we play Harrogate. I'm looking at the fixtures here now. Forest Green are away at Crawley. Crawley are playing so much bloody big part in the running, and their form's crap. Although they beat Bradford last time out, so maybe they'll pick up a little bit. Maybe they think they've got a last chance. Exeter are at home against Newport. Again, 2 teams playing each other. I mean, Morecambe is still just about catchable. They're playing at home against Bolton. Bradford are away at Port Vale, a form team again. Salford have got Mansfield Town. That would, if only. Salford have got Mansfield Town at home. Leighton Orient away at Southend. Everyone's got bloody Southend in the running, haven't they, it seems. And Tranmere at home against Barrow. So, then there's opportunities there in these next 3 games to get ourselves into a playoff position. What we'll do is for the next 2 preview episodes we've got coming up, we'll take a proper good look at the fixtures people have got coming up, so we can say, look, this is who's against who. So we maybe won't focus so much on the opposition in those games. We'll focus on the clashes coming up, won't we? I think in those games. Yeah. That's what we'll do. Team news. So obviously Divine and Coyote are now back fit again. Don't think there's any new injuries from Tuesday night. Didn't look like it, did they? Morgan Feeney still closing on that return. We don't know when that reserve game's going to be played yet. Out for the rest of the season are Jamie Armstrong, Reece Bennett and Brennan Dickinson. Predictions, Mike. Dan hasn't sent his predictions in to me. So let's just say he's gone for 2-0 wins because that's what he likes to pick.
Yeah.
What are you going to go for?
I'm going to be bold and dangerous, and I'm going to say that we're going to get a 0-0 against Port Vale, but we're going to beat Bolton 2-1.
Oh.
I know, and the goal scorers will have Mellish and McDonald finally getting his goal.
You really fancy that, don't you? Okay, well, I'm going to go... You know what? I'm going to go super positive. Super positive. 2-0 win against Port Vale.
Oh.
And I'm going to go for a 2-1 win against Bolton.
Oh.
I'm going to go for goal scorers against Port Vale. John Mellish and Amari Patrick. And then against Bolton. Have we got any ex-Bolton players in our squad?
I
don't know if we have we?
Sure if we do, no.
No, I don't think we have because I fancy one of them to do it. I'm going to go for, in that game, goal for Aaron Hayden and... do I go for Colin Guy finally? That's the question. No, I'm going to go for Zanzala. Zanzala will get the winner in that game. So there you go. Yeah. In fact, no. Tell you what, I'm going to go for Zanzala and Coyote. That's what I'm going to go for my goal scorers in the Bolton game. Coyote's going to come back in.
Thinking about it, obviously it's a home game for them. They're doing very well. They're going to probably be playing with quite a high line. So, players like Patrick and Zanzala with their pace will be able to get him behind and hopefully cause them a lot of problems.
Yep, you hope so. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go on to the X-Files then quickly, Mike. Have a look at how ex-United players and coaches have been getting on across the world. I'm looking at the group here. I haven't had a chance to type it down in the running order, but looks at Ryan Bowman scored for Exeter at the weekend, as did Mark Beck. Nice to see him get on the score sheet for Harrogate. As well as that, finally back in the goal scoring list, Charlie Wyke. It's taken him a while, but he scored for Sunderland.
Terrible season he's having.
Oh, he's having an absolute shocker, isn't he? That was a midweek or that one. Cole Stockton scoring again for Morecambe. They beat it was Scunthorpe. They beat 4-1, wasn't it, in midweek? Interestingly, John O'Sullivan set up 3 goals in that game. He's having a terrific season for them as well. Fair play to the lad. He's turned his career around there, hasn't he? I think both of them have actually. Angelo Balanta scored for Dagenham and Redbridge in the conference. Pat Bruff scored against us, but he also scored against Exeter as well. The Cumbrian Carlos, as Dan has labelled him. We'll have to find out. Is there any left backs you can think of whose name begins with an S? Because he's from Silliff, isn't he?
I haven't got a clue.
The Silliff Shore, maybe. I don't know, something like that. But there you go. But yeah, he's having a terrific season. But fair play to Pat. Jack Bridge scored again for Bromley. He's getting a few goals for them, isn't he? Like I said, he's a player. You do wonder if he must look back and think to himself, should have took that contract offer at Carlisle. We don't know what it was. It might have been reduced terms and not particularly good money, but maybe one of those ones with incentives if you'd done well. But there you go. And Paddy Madden scored a brace for Stockport, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's getting in the. He's going to score for fun. If they don't get up for the playoffs, he's going to score for fun in the conference next season, isn't he? In the National League,
definitely.
Sorry, to give it its correct title. And other than that, that's it really. Other than the fact that Jerry Yates is again being linked with a move, isn't he? He's been linked with a move to Rangers now. Interesting one. That I think he'd have a really good time in the SPL, wouldn't he?
I think he's valued at 2 mil, I think, and I think it'd tear it to shreds. He really would.
You think he would, wouldn't he? Mike, that's it then. No quiz again this week because Dan obviously isn't with us. He's away with work this week, so not being able to get him on. But hopefully we'll get him on after the Bolton game next week, and we'll get some good reaction to that, and we'll talk about the running. Hopefully an exciting running for us. Hopefully, I just really hope it's not season over, don't you? Just get 2 good results, 2 good solid results, nothing flashy, and let's get ourselves into those playoffs. That's the aim, isn't it? So yeah, if you've got any comments or anything you'd like us to discuss, any feedback, then as usual, you can find us on the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook group. You can get us on Twitter at Brunton Bugle, or you can email us, bruntonbugle@gmail.com. To be honest, I've been a bit bad. I haven't really been looking at the email too much over the last week. I've been quite busy with work and stuff, but I'll have a look through and see if there's anything in there that people want to contribute to. Of course, you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, all Google Podcast apps, so Google, Apple, Spotify, Acast, iHeartRadio, any podcast app, get on there. You'll find us. Search for Brunton Bugle. If we're not on there, let us know, because we can usually get ourselves on there as well if we request it. And yeah, that's it, I think, really. Let's have a quick look, Mike, and see if there's anything new on the map. Oh, we've got a new country. Could it be our one-time 5 appearances or something like that left back from the 2013-14 season, Alessio Bugno? In fact, 2012-13, sorry, I should correct myself. It was the season before. 2012-13 season, Alessio Bugno, because it's Italy. Viva Italia. We've got an Italian listener.
There you go.
Thank you to our Italian listener who's joined us this week. I don't know any Italian, so I'm not even going to try and say anything to you there. I don't know if you know any, Mike.
No.
No. Yeah. Arrivederci. That's Italian. I can't remember what it means, but there you go.
I think grazie is thank you.
Grazie, is it? Grazie. Grazie to our Italian listener. Thank you for joining us this week. And that's it, Mike. Thanks once again for joining me. We'll be back next week for... Basically, we're not going to have any specials anytime soon. I haven't had a chance to put it together. Basically, we're just going to focus on these episodes for now. And what we'll do is we'll get you some nice specials done for this summer that'll tide us over when the Euro's on and stuff like that. And that's it, Mike. Thank you once again for joining me. Always appreciate it. Always a pleasure. And thank you everyone for listening to the Blues.
Blues.